As Omaha native Brian Windhorst once said, "What it do, baby?" And yes, I'm going to keep that going. This is the Half Court Press podcast. I am Jimmy Watkins, the Nebraska basketball beat writer, with a little bit of football, but for the purposes of this podcast, football doesn't exist. He is Joel Lorenzi. He's the Creighton basketball beat writer. We both work at the Omaha World-Herald. We're in the office today. This is our second episode. We just finished doing a photo shoot. I debated quoting a Jay-Z line from Otis. Can you guess what line I'm thinking of, Joel?
No, I can't.
Photo shoot fresh. Looking like wow. I'm about to call the paparazzi on myself.
Yeah.
Joel and I just sat in front of a camera and a professional photographer for what, an hour?
Yeah, it kind of feels like we're in another photo shoot right now with the lights.
Yeah,
all,
the lights.
all dim.
The lights are off. We're waiting for somebody. Quick peek behind the curtain. What happened to the Nerf gun? There we go. Yeah. Quick peek behind the curtain. We have a light in our studio that basically, I don't know, does it go off due to inactivity? I think that's what it is. And we bought a Nerf gun to shoot at it when that happens. And if you can't see it, but I'll describe it to you.
I don't know. That's what was actually
happening. That ceiling tile has taken a beating. Okay. It is not looking great up there from the Nerf gun. But yeah, Joel and I sat. We were supposed to talk to each other but not make eye contact, and then we were supposed to make intense eye contact for long periods of time.
Shout out to Brodo. Shout out Marco.
Shout out Marco. He got us. Cool. He had us looking good. He was very patient.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Marco like taking his hat off, rummaging through his hair.
He moved my phone.
How can I?
Like,
he did not like when Joel had his phone out, and he was frustrated with us. We're rookies at this stuff, but we appreciate Marco. Supposedly this is going to result in some sort of advertising campaign,
TV commercials and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know.
The big time
I don't know that I deserve to be included in that, but cool. We appreciate Z Long, our podcast, internet photography overlord. I probably missed a few things there for including us in that ad campaign. Now we're going to talk a little bit of hoops, and I would say the biggest story going right now is Florida transfer Kiante Johnson is at this very moment. We got a chopper in the sky. We don't. But he's on Nebraska's campus right now. He got in last night. He should be leaving tomorrow morning. And he's going to make a decision super duper fast because school starts next week for Nebraska and a couple other schools I'm sure that are on his list. Memphis is on the list. Had to hold in a burp there. I should know. Am I allowed to say, Z, that I drank a Miller Lite before this? One American Miller Lite? Okay, I did say it. I had one American Miller Lite with lunch before this, so I had to hold back a burp there. Yeah, Joel is better than I am. Yeah. And Kiante Johnson is down to Memphis, Nebraska, Kansas State, and Western Kentucky. Yeah. I'm not a betting man, but I would not put my money on Western Kentucky. And this is a big deal, Joel, because this is a really good basketball player from a couple of years ago. Averaged 14 points and 7.3 rebounds for Florida, playing 31 games in 2019-20. That's the SEC. That's big boy country. That's the kind of scoring punch that Nebraska needs. Joel, I'll ask you this. I'll do most of the breakdown here, but what can you tell us about Kiante Johnson as a basketball player?
Well, Kiante Johnson so shout out Kiante Johnson because this was one of my favorite players back when I actually had the time to still keep up with high school basketball because I think I was. So Kiante Johnson's a year younger than me, so I was still very much keeping up with Kiante, and Oak Hill felt more prevalent back then. I mean, obviously they're still good, but that was like these were like peak Oak Hill teams to me. And
so he's a class of 2017. Is
2018.
That right? 2018. Okay.
So I never really felt like I don't remember him ever really being the best player. Maybe until his last year on those Oak Hill teams. Maybe not even the best player. I don't know. I can't recall. That's not how I remember it. But I do remember him being a high flying sensation. Just made good plays. Was a very promising athlete. But he made a super big leap when he went down in Gainesville to the point where I feel like a lot of people forget this now that he's been inactive for so long. But he was preseason SEC Player of the Year back when the season where he fell out on the court. Like that was his year to take off. And
he was averaging 16 a game in the 4 games that he did play before he collapsed on the court against Florida State.
He was for sure Florida's best player, and he was definitely a top 2 player in the conference that year and was bound for a big year. So very unfortunate how that all went down. I always liked him. Maybe at the next level, well, not maybe at the next level. He was bound for the next level, of course, at his trajectory. But I always thought maybe he could actually be a pretty decent contributor at the next level too.
Yeah, he is. I would describe him as like sort of a classic two guard, slasher, shooter, scorer kind of guy.
Yeah.
Creates for himself. Okay.
Yeah.
Can beat guys off the dribble. Has a nice in and out move. Really good at attacking closeouts. Good shooter. 37% from three during his first 2 years at Florida. Has some bounce. More of a finisher than a creator, though. I think he topped out at around like 1.7 assists per game
I think the value's off the ball if
for sure.
The 37
for sure.
mark stays and how much of a high flyer he is.
I was talking to Kent Pavelka, the Nebraska play-by-play announcer, earlier today. I try to keep in touch with Kent as much as I can. I find him to be a treasure trove of information and experience. And what I had told him basically was, and this kind of like there's a pro and a con here. I'm a pro and con guy. We're gonna make a list. The pro is Nebraska has the kind of team and the kind of primary ball handler in Sam Griesel that will do what Fred Hoiberg wants them to do. To put it nicely, I don't think that last year's team always did that. Sam Griesel's a great table setter. He's a guy that can set other guys up pretty well. He'll do what Fred asked him to do, and Fred is a great offensive play caller, a great offensive designer. He can get guys in advantageous situations to score. My question to Kent this morning was, as the roster stands, who are we setting the table for? And I didn't have the answer to that. That's been my biggest concern for this team for most of the offseason was how are they going to score, who's going to create advantages, who's going to beat guys off the dribble. They've been talking about playing two bigs at once, and then they're talking about playing Juwan Gary, and they want to post up Sam Griesel. You can't do all of these things without messing up your spacing, and that's what Fred prides himself on. That's what we're going to talk about Eli Rice a little bit later on, the newest Nebraska commit, and one of his biggest selling points about going to Nebraska was Fred telling him, look at all these open driving lanes. Look at all the space we have on the court. You're a guy who likes to get to the rim. It's going to be very easy for you. And it's not going to be very easy for a lot of the guys on this team. Now, Kiante Johnson is the kind of guy who, if you get him the ball, he can create an advantage out of nothing. That's very important. That's a guy that doesn't exist. Maybe Ramel Lloyd, maybe, on the team right now. But that's not a guy that they have an experienced guy that they have right now. Flip side. The cons. Hasn't played basketball since 2019-20, really. He played 4 games in 2020-21, and then last year he stepped on the court very briefly in a ceremonial, it's nice to have you back, it's nice that you're recovering kind of deal. Didn't really play a minute, got him out of the game immediately. I don't know what he's going to look like coming back. I don't know how this sort of episode impacts your aggressiveness. How long it takes you to get back to the kind of guy you want. He's a fearless rim attacker when he was scoring the way he was at Florida. The other thing is, and I don't want people to freak out, I'm not making a comparison to the two players at all. There's a little Alonzo Verge, this situation. To refresh people's memory, Alonzo Verge, the point guard at Nebraska last year, came along, I think he joined the program in July, so midway through the summer session. And looking back, I think we kind of understand that was a tough situation to put Alonzo Verge in. Throw him into a team that's already practicing, ask him to be a floor general point guard, ask him to be the primary creator, which is a role that he had never played at this level before. And I don't think that's the role they're going to ask Kiante Johnson to play. But I do think that Sam and I have talked about this on Pick 6 before. You bring Alonzo Verge in, you upset the balance that already existed. The team is building chemistry. The team are, they're finding roles. They're settling in, and then you bring in this new guy who's going to have the ball all the time. That's challenging. Basketball can be a very delicate ecosystem, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And so now we're doing that even later in the game. The summer session's over now. School's about to start. Roles during the summer, roles are starting to shape. They're going to become defined over the next couple months. And here's a guy that, in my eyes, could be Nebraska's primary scorer that you're bringing in potentially 2-3 days before school starts. That's a challenging dynamic to work in. Wouldn't you say, Joel?
Yeah, definitely. But I think a few important points with Kiante Johnson. I think that's a guy, like, as much as it feels like Sam Griesel is going to be the guy orchestrating the offense and really setting the table, as you say, Kiante Johnson feels like an easier plug-in than a guy like Alonzo Verge. I mean, it feels like a guy who, while he can create advantages for himself, is probably better off, off the ball or DHO, stuff like that, like where he doesn't have to set the table for himself all the time. And Kiante Johnson, I mean, that's a different frame. Like, that's a real wing we're talking about. Like, that's 6'5", 6'6", 230. Like, he has a real threat of a frame. I think that's what helped him fly high so often. And the thing with Kiante Johnson, I think, obviously the injury thing is scary, right? Like, this is something that you probably want to take precaution with. And I think, Fred Hoiberg is a good guy to be monitoring that, as we talked about. So at the same time, like, I don't think with an injury like that, I don't think it affects his approach to the game. Like, I think he'll still be viciously attacking the rim. I just think maybe it takes minute restrictions or whatever the case may be. They ease into it because obviously they must feel like he's ready to come back if, this is the point we're at. So I wouldn't worry about his tactical approach to the game or anything like that. I would say it's going to be a lot less of a burden, I think, for him to be trying to orchestrate offense and create maybe the position they put Verge in. But with Kiante, man, this is a guy, like, if there are nights he has to defer, I think he can and still be effective, coming off the backside, like just doing different stuff off the ball. It's just a way more pluggable player, especially with his frame and everything to him.
You make a really good point. He's, again, I'm not trying to compare him and Verge's players. They're going to have completely different roles, and you make a really good point. He's a guy who can spot up. He can sit in the corner and wait and be a floor spacer. He's a guy who can cut back door and be a lob guy. He's got really impressive bounce. That's a much easier kind of player to fit into an already existing ecosystem. You're upsetting. You're not shaking the snow globe as much, right? You're not taking the ball out of somebody's hands. You are, though. I mean, if he joins the roster, there's somebody's minutes that he's going to take. Probably maybe a couple.
I think it's a worthy bet. I
agree 100%. But I'm just saying, you've already established this is the off season of good vibes for Nebraska basketball after a regular season of very bad vibes.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
I will say, out of shape Kiante Johnson, I would take over a lot of players.
100%.
Yeah.
He's going to be the most talented player on the roster.
So, as much as people might be worried about the build-up to the season, he'll be ready.
Just saying, this is a game, there are 10 other dudes on that team right now that think a certain way. 10 is a big number. 3, 4, 5 dudes on that team right now that see themselves a certain way. That's going to change if you bring in a guy like this. He's a guy. You're bringing in a guy who's going to be. I think if he hits the ceiling of what they want him to be, he's going to be their leading scorer. He's going to be a guy that plays a ton of minutes, and that's taking away from somebody else who already felt secure. And this is a team that feels really good about themselves as teammates, and they love their chemistry and things like that. They need the talent influx. That's the headline. That's what I want people who are listening right now to understand. First and foremost, they need this scoring punch badly. It's kind of a tricky fit, though. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. Other Nebraska news this week. Ernie Zigler, the former assistant coach at deep breath, Mississippi State, Detroit Mercy, UCLA, Pittsburgh, Kansas State, Bowling Green, head coach at Central Michigan, coached overseas for a couple of years before he joined the college ranks, former AAU guy in the Detroit area where he grew up, started as an assistant coach in the Detroit high school ranks, is the new Nebraska assistant basketball coach. Joel, you probably have a better. You grew up monitoring recruiting. This is a guy who has strong ties in the Midwest.
Yeah.
He's got strong ties on the West Coast from his days at UCLA, East Coast from his days at Pitt. He's a guy that he tells us, Fred tells us, has good connections in Texas, and crucially, has connections with the NBA's Academy Africa, because Alfred Aboya, the former UCLA player who runs that program, was recruited to UCLA by Ernie Zigler, and Ben Howland told me earlier this week that Zigler helped Aboya get his first NBA job. He was a player development guy in the G League before he worked in the Academy Africa. What value does a guy with that kind of recruiting background bring to a program?
Oh, everything. Because I think if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, obviously the thing you're missing most is talent these days, right? So getting a guy on like Ernie Zigler means everything. Granted, I think his highest ranked recruit ever, at least one of them, was his son, which feels like a given, right? But, I mean, frankly, dude, I've talked to Trey Zigler a bit.
Trey Zigler is a GA at Creighton, for those who don't know.
Yeah, Trey Zigler is a very cool dude, and he is very family-oriented. But you got to look at the schools he turned down to go to Central Michigan and play under his father.
We were talking about this at lunch before we got here.
Yeah, you're looking at Arizona State, I believe UCLA, Michigan State. Like
those
these
were the Final Five, I believe.
Dude, like Michigan State, even though I don't know how much he wanted to be, because that team had some high-ranked recruits. We're talking Adrian Payne, Keith Applin. Like those were some really good teams in that era, and I don't know how much he would have wanted to be just another piece, which is I'm sure probably part of what made
and it's
Central
hard
Michigan
to bet against
compelling.
the dad in these recruiting battles.
Yeah, but I would say, I mean, that's still like that's a compliment in itself. I mean, Trey Zigler was ranked like in the 30s in the country. Like that's a high feat, and I mean his Ernie, that is his reputation.
And Central
precedes
Michigan,
him.
let's be clear. I want to be nice to Central Michigan. I came from the MAC, so I'm sensitive to those who look down. Central Michigan is one of the worst basketball programs in the country. Before Ernie got there, and he didn't do this either, by the way, I believe there had been 2 coaches in the previous, let's say, 30 years who had put together consecutive 500 seasons. Think about that.
Yeah.
So again, it's his kid, but it's still a big ask to get a top 40-ish, top 30-ish recruit to come to Central Michigan. I don't care how you know him.
No doubt. And so I think, I mean, Jimmy listed all the schools. I mean, you talking about this guy has done it virtually everywhere. So it means a lot, especially like it's not like Nebraska already kind of tapped into like with Bradenbach. Like he's from modern day. Like, you know, if you can increase your ties for schools like that, powerhouses over on that side, not just in the Midwest and not just in Detroit. I mean, Michigan has a great influx of talent right now too. Like just having those ties means everything to get kids to come here and really see a future as a starter or just playing more minutes than, you know, I don't know, the Michigans of the world or whatever. Just helping increase that vision however you can. I think it was a great hire, and I think he'll do some of the same stuff here.
Playing time is a valuable selling commodity for recruits. The fan base, every recruit that comes here, I think you can become numb to it sometimes, especially me. I talk to these recruits who commit to Nebraska, whether it's football or basketball, and they all say, "Oh my goodness, the fans come up to you," and yada yada yada. And you know, when I was talking to Chase Clemens, who's in the 2023 class right now, he said that when he was working out in Atlanta, Georgia, there were Nebraska fans who knew who he was, like working at his local gym in Atlanta, and he's a high school kid and a 3-star kid at that. Not somebody, it's different from a Bryce McGowan, who's actually his cousin. You can get numb to that stuff, but that's another huge selling point. And Ernie, who has been everywhere, wouldn't expect him to say anything else because he just got this job, said yesterday in his introductory press conference, this situation, meaning the facilities, are some of the best in the country. He hadn't been here since 2011 when he was coaching at Central Michigan. He came to play Nebraska during the non-con, and he was blown away by the upgrades that have been made since then. This is a hire. I would say this about the Ernie Zigler hire. Joel covered the recruiting stuff beautifully. That part can't be overstated. It's important to bring in talent. That's very simple. We can all grasp that. To me, my biggest takeaway from hearing Ernie talk yesterday was that Fred Hoiberg still has the street cred in the coaching world, because Ernie said that he reached out to Fred early in the process after he heard that Armand Gates left. He reached out to Fred. That's notable to me. Fred said that Ernie was aggressive about contacting the program. That stood out to me. And you just look, this is what I basically wrote yesterday. Fred Hoiberg has won 24 games in 3 seasons. That's really bad. He's 9-50 in conference play. It's really bad. He just had to. None of his assistants who were here when he started here are here anymore. That's not a good sign. You just had to reshuffle. The rosters had to be reshuffled every year. Yes, that's part of the new reality of transfer portal college basketball, but also that's what happens when you win 24 games in 3 years at the same time. Ernie Zigler, who's been to the national championship game, who's been in several successful programs, took a look at all of that and said, I want to be there. Because, as he said, he called around. This is a man with an extensive network, not just in the recruiting world and the coaching world. He's worked with a ton of different assistants. He's worked with Ben Howland. He's worked with, a name that doesn't carry a ton of positive spin with it anymore, but he worked for Dan Dockich at Bowling Green. That's a guy who knows a lot of people, right? He called around all these people, and they said, yeah, I know that Nebraska hasn't, he didn't say this, but it's a fact that Nebraska hasn't ranked better than 117th in offensive efficiency since Fred's been hired here. And they still told him that's one of the best offensive minds in basketball. The NBA background still carries. And another thing that Ernie pointed out, which is particularly interesting to me, is the way that Fred has adapted to the new way of coaching. I'm using air quotes. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it's a new culture in basketball, right? It used to be you listen to your coach. That's the bottom line. Coach says it, you do it, no questions asked. Now, as Ernie said yesterday, kids are asking why, and they want you to explain more to them. And being a coach is not as you're not a dictator anymore. You have to explain things to these kids. You have to make them understand why you want them to do those things. And Ernie said that some of the feedback he's gotten is that Fred is one of the better coaches at doing that, which is interesting to me because we had this whole fiasco last season where Kobe Webster was saying that the program lacked accountability on the radio, and then they had to have a press conference about it where no one was happy to be there, and it was bad. Last year's team, I don't think it's a stretch to say lacked accountability at times, and so it's interesting for me to hear Ernie say what he said from his perspective, given that information. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that Fred Hoiberg, despite all of the struggles, and there have been many here and in Chicago, it's been a long time since Fred Hoiberg has actually had a good season in any stop. I mean, like, what do you make of whatever you want to make of the Chicago Bulls team that took the Boston Celtics to 6 as an 8 seed? Yeah, it was a 500 team. But it's been a long time, probably going back to Iowa State, since Fred Hoiberg really felt good about the end of any basketball season that he coached. And Ernie Zigler still said, I want to be attached to that guy. That means something to me. All right, we're going to do a quick hit on Eli Rice. This will be, I'm gonna clear out for a second here, Joel. Eli Rice, Nebraska basketball commit, 2023 class, 6'7", 3-star recruit according to On3, not rated by any of the other recruiting services yet, but he's about to play at IMG Academy in Florida, which is going to be a big jump up for him because you watch him on tape right now. You watch his YouTube stuff. He's playing for Beach High School in Tennessee, and he's the tallest kid on the court. That's what stands out to me. The competition level is about to jump up. You see the skills, though. He can shoot it. He's got the lefty stroke. I've always personally believed that lefties have a prettier shooting stroke.
Facts.
And I say that as a righty. He is capable of attacking closeouts. He can get to the rim. He's not one of these kids who still needs to grow into his body. He's very coordinated. He's long. I'm not trying to put too much evidence, but there are clips of him blocking shots. He cares on defense, and I see him as like a floor spacery wing with good size who can attack closeouts. We'll see. We'll see from there. I think we're going to learn a lot more about what he can be. I think he's, just by virtue of going to IMG, his recruiting profile will rise. How much further it will rise and how much of a steal he ends up being for Nebraska. They got in early on this recruit, and I should mention the name Emmanuel Tommy, the new director of player development at Nebraska right now, because this is a guy who Eli Rice told me he knew before he knew Adam Howard or Fred Hoiberg or any of these guys. Emmanuel Tommy, former McNeese State director I think he was the director of basketball operations there, if I'm not mistaken. And he that's when Tommy met Eli Rice, and he kept telling him, I'm not even going to try to recruit you to McNeese State because I know you're going to go somewhere bigger. But if I ever get somewhere big enough, we're going to come after you. Sure enough, they hire Emmanuel Tommy the same month that Adam Howard reaches out to Eli Rice for the first time. You can connect the dots. You see what happened there. So that's an interesting get. He's the second member of the class. Chase Clemens being the other one that's still in the class right now. And I think it's smart for them to be in on the ground floor like this, a guy with really good positional size. I mean, that's 6'7" wing guys in college basketball. It's not something you see all the time. You see a lot of 3-guard offenses, to be honest. Yeah. And having a guy on the perimeter who can move his feet and has the wingspan and can shoot the ball like that, ready-made, like that's a 3-and-D guy. It's not hard to envision his fit here. So that's exciting. Moving on. Well, actually, we're going to talk about Creighton. We're going to talk about Rati Andronikashvili. Yeah. That's right. I was the Creighton beat writer for 2 weeks. I learned how to pronounce the names. We're going to talk about Creighton in just a little bit, but I want to, this is we're doing in the first episode, we did our rap takes, our music minute, whatever we want to call that segment at the end of the podcast. Sam McEwen, our boss, who we love, wants us to try it in the middle of the podcast to see, we want to get a better gauge on what people's interest in this sort of thing is. We're probably going to do it regardless. Yeah. It's just a matter of, do we want to throw it in the middle? Do we want to put it at the end? We're going to do it right now. This is sort of our buffer zone. So if you don't want to hear about my rap takes for the next 2-3 minutes, skip ahead a little bit. It's been, 2-3 weeks since we recorded, Joel? Mm-hmm. Since then, we've had Joey Badass. We've had...
Well, did Joey come out the weekend?
I think the weekend after we recorded. Before? I think, or maybe... I remember you coming in here and saying that you hadn't heard it yet. So it came out. So it's been about a month of Joey. We've gotten Steve Lacy since then. What I want to talk about real quick, and this is a digestible topic for everyone, The Game, a rapper from Los Angeles, in his heyday, one of the best rappers that we've seen. It's been a long time. The documentary, sure. The documentary came out in 2002, 2003. That's a long time ago. That's probably one of the best. That's on the short list of best rap albums ever. He dropped a 30-song album. I'm not going to review that album. I don't really care. Yeah. NBA YoungBoy, who is a guy that probably resonates more with some of our younger listeners.
Well, Jimmy, you say that like you're 35 or something.
No. I'm just talking about in general. The Game is someone who, if you're 40, you know the Game is. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The NBA YoungBoy is more our speed. Both of them just dropped 30-song albums, which is crazy to me. Yeah. That people I understand business-wise, it makes a lot of sense. The more songs you have, in theory, the more streams you can build, and that's how a lot of these rappers make their money. Joel, what do you think of 30-track albums?
30 songs. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed somebody who had an album even longer than 20 songs. Yeah. I mean, 30-song albums feel like something exclusively reserved for Chris Brown these days. And granted, I haven't enjoyed listening to Chris Brown in a very long time. So it's not a good idea, especially with somebody like YoungBoy, where he drops so much and he just oversaturates the market so much. And it's I'm already having a hard time listening to you. But you give me 30 songs of stuff I don't want to listen to, that's just going to make me, it's going to drive me to probably hate you. I don't want to hear your music. And in the Game, come on, nobody that age should be dropping even 15 songs. I'm surprised he had 30 to put out there to comfortably put out there.
You should be dropping your greatest hits right now if you're the Game. And a 30 track, I mean, look, I like the Game a lot. I listened to the album, I listened to the whole thing. And I liked a decent amount. I have a few of them saved, but
you went through them.
Oh yeah, it's like shit. I would compare it to like binging a series on Netflix. You do it in waves.
Give me a break.
You're 10.
He should be writing a book now or something, doing documentaries or something.
I hit 10 to 12 on the Friday it came out, and maybe 5 more on Saturday.
You disgust me.
And the rest on Sunday. That's how I divvied it up. But I want to frame it this way. There are a lot of things that the generations older than us say about us that I disagree with.
Sure.
The attention span thing totally tracks.
Yeah.
Have you ever, me sitting in a room by myself, today is a perfect example. Us sitting there in front of the camera just looking at it, I was very uncomfortable. Like I
Yeah.
felt like I needed to do something with my hands. I wanted to be on my phone. It's hard for me to sit still. It's hard for me to be focused in on one thing. Like when I read books, I try very hard to read at least a book a month every year. And there's always a period for me where I need to sit there and just like get going, because I'll have to read a couple sections over a couple times in the beginning before you get in a groove and you can actually like be absorbed in it. I think that's just a product of like, ooh, Twitter notifications, ooh, Instagram notifications, like everything popping up on you immediately. Like, oh, there's news. I have it at the touch of my hand. Like Woj has news. I know it immediately because he tweets it out. So for you to ask for I forget how long. I think it's an hour and 42 minutes, the game album. For you to ask for an hour and 42 minutes of my time.
He could have did a documentary with an hour and 42 minutes.
100%. For you to ask for an hour and 42 of my hour and 42 minutes of my time is a huge ask.
Yeah.
Huge ask. And I did it, but I know that a lot of people I did it so most of my friends didn't have to be honest with you. I sent out the ones I liked to my friends. I would recommend the song.
Shame on you.
The one with Pusha T and 2 Chainz absolutely goes.
I'm sure.
I forget what it's
I
called.
like Pusha T today.
Yeah.
See, that's a guy I would
Yeah.
not 30 songs, but I'll take 20
A
songs from
full-length
Pusha.
album.
And I don't care how many, these geezers want to,
Geezers.
diagnose us with ADHD. Like, dude, it doesn't even
probably
take that
have
to not want to hear 30
For sure.
or 20 or 15
Yeah.
or 10 songs from the game in 2022. Like, that's just.
The Kendrick album was, I think, 16 songs, and that was considered a double album.
Yep.
So that's
And that's
just to give
fine.
You,
like,
just
why,
to give you an idea.
I don't know why people stray so much from the norm. Like,
They want money.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And that's
why
fair.
Drake. That's why Drake drops 24 song out. That's why Scorpion was as long as it was.
But it
That's
works
why,
for Drake.
Well, yeah, he's different.
It works for Drake because about 12 to 15 of those songs are going to be on the Billboard
Right.
charts.
And people are gonna stick around for Drake.
Yeah.
They just are. Okay, best song on the Joey Badass album, real quick.
The one with West Side Gun. I think it's 9.
New 911. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I'm glad you brought that up. Quick power ranking of my favorite sounds where rappers are imitating gun noises.
yeah.
Number 1 is Kendrick's doo 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 doo. Number 2 is anyone.
now.
This is kind of generic. It's like the like we're spraying out the window.
Do it
side of a
again.
disc, like one of those. And then number 3, but quickly rising up the charts, is Westside going boop 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 boop.
That should be
boop,
your
boop,
number
boop.
one.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I love that so much. That's a great choice. I'll go Eulogy. That's just classic boom bap.
Yeah.
Joey flowing over a smooth beat. That was our rap. That was our rap minute, our music minute, our rap takes. We're still
Yeah.
workshopping names.
Shout
for
out
the
Steve
segment.
Lacy, though.
Shout out Steve Lacy also. Great
Yeah.
album. Bad Habit. Absolute banger.
Unbelievable.
Helmet. Incredible.
Generation defining
Yeah,
song.
that guy's super duper talented. And that's not rap music, by the way. So I would encourage any person with a pulse, check out that
If
Steve
they
Lacy
haven't
album,
already heard it
sure.
for some
You got
reason.
It.
Yeah.
You got it. All right, Creighton time. We're back from rap takes. Rati, I'll say it again. Andronikashvili
Nice.
has left the program to pursue other opportunities. What is Creighton losing?
A hard-nosed guy, I say. A guy that could come in, spot you a few minutes. But truthfully, a guy I don't think they'll miss too much. You look at the return of Sharif Mitchell. This is a guy who played pretty good minutes before he went down last season, and then before that played solid minutes. So I think they're really looking forward to his return. I've heard he's looked pretty good this summer. I think this team wants to. I mean, obviously, you look across the board. The offensive identity might not be there yet, but the potential to have one or even multiple, to have just so many different looks offensively is there. Obviously, they got all the offensive talent in the world. They got all the talent in the world. But what Greg McDermott has told me time and time again is it starts with defense, and I think they want to build that identity. And I don't know how much potential there is for that outside of Kalkbrenner, because it's almost like Gobert, right? Like you take Gobert out those Jazz lineups, they suck at defense. And I don't think Creighton necessarily sucks, but they're a much better defensive team, like an unbelievable defensive team with him out there.
It's often said that Rudy Gobert is like a walking top 10 defense.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about Ryan Kalkbrenner,
Yep.
a walking very good defense in college basketball.
No doubt. So I think outside of Kalkbrenner, the guys, because I mean, I think you saw this a lot last year with Ryan Hawkins. Like Ryan Hawkins was very good at communicating on defense, right? Like that's what made him a solid defender at that, but he couldn't stay in front of anybody.
Right.
So
They had him during the Kansas game. They put him on Remy Martin just to encourage Remy to shoot jumpers.
Yeah.
Remy hit a couple jumpers and they busted by him, and Greg then dusted that. Put that strategy in the wastebasket, and after the game admitted that it was a mistake.
Yeah. So I think Mac is trying to look for those same qualities that Hawkins had, like the defensive communicator. Obviously, he doesn't want somebody that's a statue like Hawkins was a lot of times. But I think when you look at defense and, defending the perimeter and covering those holes that Kalkbrenner can't get to because he's already so much of everywhere, a lot of that's going to have to do with Sharif Mitchell. Like, he's going to come in, defend good to great guards, and they're going to be able to live with that. They're going to be able to wipe their hands with it. He'll come and play. I don't know how many minutes he'll play this year. They got a lot of ball handlers, but I'm sure he'll play good 15 minutes a game, maybe more. Like, people shouldn't be frowning about Rodney. Like, I know people like the flashes he showed, but this almost feels like it was like bound to happen, right? Maybe not playing pro. I didn't see that coming, but a transfer or something like that. It felt like it was in the cards, just off the way this team shaped up and how many guys they got in that backcourt, and with Reef coming back and all that. It just felt like it was bound to happen.
I don't necessarily know that he was in their plans last year, right? It's just that Sharif got hurt.
Right, yeah.
Got hurt. He got thrown into the fire. And one thing that they will miss with him is he was a very willing defender, always played really hard. You can, all the trademark things that coach loved, diving for loose balls, fighting hard to box out, all the effort kind of stuff that matters. And that's important for building a culture and teaching other guys that everybody on this team can do that stuff. Like, look, this is a guy who doesn't shoot a ton of shots. We don't ask very much of him in any category, really, except for to try really hard on defense and get deflections, all that sort of stuff. That means that's not nothing, but it's a healthy enough culture where I think that losing one guy who does that doesn't mean that they're going to lose that part of their identity. And I agree with you that I don't know that he was going to play a ton this year anyways. So, Rati, we knew you well. Wish you the best in your future pro endeavor. It doesn't sound like he has a team yet, right? He's just pursuing professional opportunities.
He's just over there. This is the surprising thing to me was, obviously, some move was probably bound to happen. I don't know how long he's thinking about it, but from what I know, he was here working out earlier in the summer.
Right.
And suddenly, because this was like after his return from Georgia, after, suiting up for them in qualifiers and whatnot.
I know for a fact that he was here when on Easter weekend when Francisco Farabello took his visit here. He was the only one here because everyone else was. Yeah.
And I'm talking after that, like July. And suddenly you see his Instagram story every day. He's definitely because he's like an artistic dude or whatever. He likes to capture the scenery. He's a real art dude. So he's like capturing Europe, suddenly, and it becomes like an everyday thing, and it goes from maybe this was in his camera roll to no, this is the life he's living every day, and you're like, why is he the only one not here?
Right.
And so good luck to him, but I something like this was probably always gonna happen. Yeah.
Last segment is Joel's chef's choice here.
Oh geez.
It's a Creighton basketball topic. We were shooting around. Is it a rotation question? Is it a bigger picture question? Is it a Big East question? What do you want to talk about pertaining to your beat?
Yeah, I want to raise the question to listeners because we know this rotation will be relatively tight. It's not like them to play probably more than 8 players consistently. So I want to raise the question: who do you guys? Feel free to even mention me on Twitter about this.
Absolutely, hit 'em.
Who do you feel like is in that rotation besides the obvious? I'm sure now.
Let's roll them off. Baylor Shireman, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Trey Alexander, Ryan Nemhard, Arthur Kaluma.
Are the 5.
Those are locks.
Yeah.
Francisco Farabello feels like a
the
lock
way
to
they
me.
talk about him,
veteran,
it feels like
veteran transfer guy wouldn't have come here without an assured role.
Yeah. And surely they want to improve on the shooting year.
Absolutely. What after that? What are we looking at?
I'd like to think they're really pulling for Mason Miller. After red-shirting last year, with a talent like that, he was ranked, I don't know, in the 70s, 80s. Like, he was a top 100 guy with a talent like that. Obviously, it's there. I know for a fact the
Mason Miller would bring what to a rotation?
Oh, he's a really great shooter. Like we're talking about, I mean, his team on his best days has a handful of shooters that are knocked down. But in terms of like real consistency, I think he's probably a top 2 shooter on that team. So that's what you're looking at. And he's just got good size. Can really be a good off-ball player, I think, and has the size, I think, to be a defender if that's what they're hoping for. But even if he's not, like I think he's just a good rotational player. And so we're looking
at 7.
That's 7?
That's 7.
Am
So
I
who's
blanking on the roster? I know I feel like they want to find time for Schultzberg.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it'll happen this year. I feel like we're missing somebody very obvious. I can't think right now.
Pull it up.
We said Mason, Farabello.
Did we say Sharif yet?
Sharif. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sharif it would be the 8th. Then.
Yeah, Sharif
would be the 7th, and then this Schultzberg, Miller, whoever. I mean, Frederick King? Question mark? No.
I don't. I think Fred King is still a very raw project. I think they like what they see in him. He attacks the rim hard. He's a powerful big man, good size. But I think in terms of the skill, I mean, he's only been playing basketball so long. So I think in terms of the skill, they're still hoping he'll come around. I mean, he'll get even if he doesn't play this year, he'll get a lot of that just being behind Kalkbrenner, learning how to be an anchor, and just being. I know Jalen Courtney Williams is a big man guy, so just learning the right footwork and gaining that necessary touch to be an impactful role guy maybe by next year or the year after that. Like I think his development is still very much in the mid to early stages, at least to compete on this team. But I don't know. Maybe he'll spot minutes. I mean, he's like the only other true big on his team.
Right. So I would be interested to see who would play back in 5 minutes if he's not playing.
Crazy enough, I think you'll see. I mean, I don't know how much they plan to like kind of stagger that front court, but I think if Kalkbrenner's not playing, it depends on what they do with Kaluma, how often he plays or what spurts he plays in. Sure. But Kaluma you're gonna see lineups with Kaluma at the 5. Like it's gonna happen. And you're gonna see lineups subsequently with Baylor Sharman at the 4. I don't know how to work defensively, but it's gonna make for pretty offensive basketball, I'm sure. So that in that case, if they are comfortable with Kaluma playing more minutes at the 5 down the stretch, I'm not sure that leaves much room for Fred King. So that he definitely. I wouldn't put him in at 8 if they do limit themselves to 8. I think Schultzberg has a better chance. Even with as crowded as that backcourt is, Schultzberg, from what I'm hearing, is just such a good decision maker, another good shooter, just a hard-nosed, talented point guard. And Mac likes him a lot, as well as the rest of the staff. But I know Mac really likes him a lot.
That's fun stuff. That's interesting stuff. It'll be interesting to see how all that unfolds. Practice starts next week. Yeah. At least for Nebraska, school starts next week. So it's getting closer. We're probably, what is it? Today is August 8th.
John Rothstein tweeted the other day that we're 13 weeks from college basketball. So
we're getting close.
Yeah.
We're getting really close.
I hate that I just cited John Rothstein. I don't got beef with John Rothstein. The guy just tweets a lot, man.
He's got a shtick, and it works for him. But I get what you're saying. He rubs me the wrong way sometimes. John Rothstein, we got beef with you. Come on our podcast.
No,
defend yourself. Defend yourself, John
man.
Rothstein. Defend yourself. All right, that'll do it for this week's Half Court Press. I'm Jimmy Watkins. He's Joel Lorenzi. This is the Omaha World-Herald. Thank you all.